All right. That's a wrap with Kirk. How'd it go?
Man, that was fun.
Yeah.
I felt like we were gathered around like the angel investing campfire to hear
Yeah.
like all the stories of
Uncle
yore.
Kirk, Grandpa
Yeah,
Kirk.
it was good. I mean,
Not that he's
yeah,
that old. I think he might be the same age as us, but
I'm not gonna go there. Uh, no, it was
well, we
really,
have to, we do the after party episodes. We assume that the guests don't listen, so we have to really let it rip.
oof, yeah. I mean, he's done so many deals like we were talking about, and I've
Yeah.
sent him a bunch, and he hasn't done any of mine, so I'm slightly offended.
Mm.
So apparently they don't
So
reach his level. They don't. The
I
world will not change.
Yeah, you must be sending him pretty shitty deals because he's done a lot. And if you've sent him a lot, like I would add, if I do
Fair.
the math calculating the deals you send him must not be good. Especially, I am a little bit envious of the invest in, 3 minutes or less. Like I like that style of angel investing. And you like get a thesis, you really believe in it, and then you just say, fuck it, let's do it. But I feel like you need a lot of money to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Especially that check
And a lot
size.
of confidence.
You know what I thought was interesting for him is he kind of identified like maybe where his investing blind spot is or kind of his Achilles heel with getting
Hmm.
emotionally invested, which I thought
Yeah.
was like a really except first when he said, I don't want to meet the founder, all this, I was like, wow, that's just really contrarian to
Yeah.
most early stage investing where, it's like you're investing in the people. And then I kind of started to see his point where, if he gets to know the founder and he starts to feel a certain way, he may invest more than he actually should, right?
Yeah.
To kind of fit within his like portfolio strategy. And I found that really interesting to like have that kind of conviction and know that well. That takes time.
Yeah, I think there were definitely a lot of follow-up questions that I wanted to ask him, but we didn't have time. I think one of them would have been, talking about the bet sizing, right? Because he sort of said that at first, he does like the 10 to 100,000 or a little bit more if he's really bullish. But then later he kind of conflicted himself, right? Because he said that he didn't like, or he doesn't like to get to know the founder. He just like, if it's a good idea, he does it. So I always think it's interesting. Like, I feel like other people we've interviewed have maybe said, like, don't invest more if you really like the idea, just sort of like get that check size that you're comfortable with, do that for every deal. And then he even said, so I feel like maybe if he is listening, that might be even good advice for him. It's like, when you get really happy about a company, like don't invest more because of that. Like I think he said one of his worst deals where he lost money was when he did that. I did like what he said about investing small amounts in areas that he wants to learn. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and that's what Andrew said on the last
Yeah,
episode
it
too. Was
reminded me of what Andrew said too.
yeah, more and more, and I kind of had a similar thought this week. Was like I kind of viewing my investing as like a ticket to the show to learn,
Yeah.
right? It's a lot of people think about it as the upside, right? As you
Hmm.
should, but it's also just like information rights, right?
Yeah.
That's what investing is in some like basic way. Uh, so for you, I mean, are you gonna change anything about the way you invest based on what you learned today?
I mean, it's a little tricky because I feel like a lot of the knowledge that we're gaining is super interesting and helpful. But we're kind of already a few years into our angel investing journey, right? So obviously, I can't change anything about what I did or, like I feel like a lot of the most impactful advice can kind of help at the start. And then now we're kind of in the midst and figuring it out, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know that there's much I can actually change based off what I heard today. I do, well, that's not true. I mean, like after talking to Andrew and then even I think Kirk today, it kind of confirmed that I do like the idea of making bets into areas that I want to learn about. Like I want to learn about space. I think Andrew and you and I have been emailing, emailed about a space deal. And then I kind of like Kirk's idea about, maybe a small amount. Like maybe I'll put a couple $1,000s into a space deal. It doesn't need to be a huge check. So I guess maybe I did learn something today.
Yeah, it's like you kind of start in your core competency, right? Because that's
Yeah.
probably your network draws you in. They say, hey, I know you, you're
Hmm.
knowledgeable about this. We'd like to have you on the cap table, so on and so forth, right?
Yeah.
And so you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to invest in my sphere of influence and an
Hmm.
expertise. And then as you become an investor, right, like you're starting to
Yeah.
think, well, this game is more about, the investment returns. So how do I play that game? Right. And
Yeah.
that's like, I kind of see that like happen with a lot of people. Probably when Andrew was saying like he started in health tech and legal, and now he's expanding out his periphery. Right. And it's like kind of
Yeah.
same for you. You have new areas. And I'm finding myself doing that too. It's like very hard to stay in your lane.
Right.
But I think if you go outside your lane, right, your bet sizing and how you go about it, like how like rigid you are about it, is like probably what keeps you from going off the rails. And really have
Right.
a system for investing there.
So if you're going to kind of go outside your lane, I think I like the idea of dropping down your bet to really, kind of probably as small as you can get it, because like kind of what you're going after in that situation, like I don't know how much value I can provide to a space tech founder, right? But it's like, oh, I want to learn about this. So if they'll let me in or I can get into this deal, like that's kind of more why I'm doing it. So I think that is definitely something that I'm, kind of already implementing. I mean, I already looked at one space deal already, and didn't know what the hell I was looking at. So I'm like, all right, let me find someone smarter that might. I was like, Andrew, are you going to invest in this? If you do it, maybe I'll consider it. Right.
Follow the leader. So there wasn't like a space ride sharing deal. Like that's not what you're into.
No, and it is funny, right? Because I'm a retired aerospace engineer, and I did do
Oh,
one
that's fair.
summer internship at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and I worked on the multi-angle infrared spectroradiometer, which sounds a lot fancier than what it is. Basically, I just sat there like drawing little digital lines around fire plumes, and it could have been done by like a monkey, but they paid me pretty well to do it for a summer. And everyone it sounded a lot fancier than the job was, but yeah, that's my like I probably know like enough to be dangerous in aerospace and space and stuff like that, but I'm definitely it's been a while and I'm no expert.
So I want to tell you a quick story that's kind of related to Kirk's like investing in the idea and
Mm-hmm.
not the people. And I don't know how this will pan out, so I'm not making a statement on whether that works or not. But so I have a good friend and founder that I like believe in would go to the ends of the earth for to
Yeah.
help. And so he started a business in crypto called Crypto Hunt. And basically, that whole market is just gone. It's been a whipsaw, right?
Yeah.
And engagement, everything in that
Gone to
market.
shit. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, despite maybe having product market fit there and something going on, it just wasn't like the right market to go into. And so, they're a learning platform. And so when ChatGPT came out, they were like, well, how do we make these lessons that we're making faster and just try ChatGPT to do it? And they did
Yeah.
that. And it seems like it's taken off. Right.
Cool.
And so they pivoted the company. And I brought other people in to invest. And so I was feeling, in some ways like, somewhat responsible that I want to
Mm-hmm.
get them a return on investment, make good bets and things like that. And now this new trajectory seems very exciting. Right. And it was kind of reminded me that like the original idea was what everyone invested in,
Yeah.
right? Some capacity, but it's really the people that are now pivoting it that are putting it into like a
Yeah.
potentially even greater trajectory. And so I don't know, I was just trying to square that with
I
like what he
think
was
that
saying.
was the most contrarian thing, I guess you would say, that I think Kirk said. I feel like the
Yeah.
general wisdom is, invest in the founder, invest in the people. The idea kind of matters less. And I would say he's pretty much the opposite. If they were on a spectrum, I think that's over here, and he is on the opposite end of the spectrum. And I think that's kind of what's cool about angel investing is that there's no right or wrong way to do it. Like everyone kind of has their own style. And if you have the confidence and the money to, to do what you want, I mean, I would say it's working pretty well for him. He has a 50% IRR, according to his calculations, right?
Yeah. I mean, by the numbers, he's doing well. Uh, and then I guess the
Well, I
question
mean,
is,
like I tweeted to you the other day, money isn't the goal, but it's a great scorecard, right?
fair.
So I don't think anyone is, or, not many people are, especially with angel investing, right? Like they're not always getting in it to make money. You want to make money, but you probably more want to learn or work with early stage. But, ultimately, like I think kind of to know if you're a good angel investor or not, it's like, did you make good money, right? Like you could have learned a lot along the way and gotten a lot out of it, but I don't know if that necessarily means that you are a good angel investor, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're just going strictly by like what's a good angel investor, it's going to be returns at some point, right? Like some
At
cold
some point,
hard.
you got to make money.
Yeah. And I wish we had asked more around like how much cash had been returned, because I think there is like
Hmm.
IRR on like that's unrealized returns, like essentially like what are the valuations of the company you're looking at.
Yeah.
And so the question is like how much capital has been returned,
Yeah.
right? Like as an early performance metric. And I know that's what venture firms look at too, right? As they go to raise their next funds, or it's like, have any capital been returned?
Yeah.
So anyway, question I want to ask going forward around that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the only tricky part about asking that on a podcast is that it's like quite detailed. I mean, really, you need a
Yeah.
spreadsheet, right? It's like, you see people talking about IRR. Do they really know what IRR? I mean, I think technically IRR, the definition, right, is like you put money in on a certain day and when do you get that cash back, right? So if you put in $100 on January 1st and you get it back on December 31st, that's a 1 year period. And if you made $10, your IRR was 10%, right? So it's like, the actual definition, right? And people say, "Oh, I got a 1,000% markup versus like 1,000% versus 1,000x is a big difference, right?" Like, what I mean. So I don't know that
Yeah.
people always know the difference with what you know what I mean. Like, there's a lot of nuance, right? Like 1,000% is only a 10x return, right?
Sorry, 1,000x
No, a
is.
1,000%,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
If you have a
Uh,
100% return on $100, that means that you made $100, right? But if you have 1,000x, that's 1,000 times 100, right? It's a big difference. So like, I think people sometimes get confused between, and the only reason I know this is because Uber used to use a 2x or a 3x surge multiple, and Lyft would use a 100% prime time. So that was equal to a 2x. And I, did like this whole big article on it. Otherwise, I would totally never have thought about it, but it
yeah,
is pretty big difference.
yeah. Uh,
So the other thing I noticed about Kirk, he had some great quotes. I wrote a few down. I don't know if you had a favorite, but I can share one or two of my favorites if you don't have any.
no, I want to hear yours first.
Well, I only wrote down a few, but I would say, I mean, the first one he said, angel investing is like rich people buying lottery tickets. Did he say Michael Siebel from YC told him that, or
Yeah.
is that a different part? But yeah, I like that because I think it's kind of true. I think Kirk's a big gambler because he talked about craps, talked about lottery tickets. I think he's a big gambler. Mental note.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we're seeing that thread, with multiple of the angels that we've talked to that do this at
Yeah,
scale, right? Like this
yeah.
is, it
Well, and
isn't.
also, everyone loves to play poker, right, in tech and VC. So yeah, there's something. I mean, it's kind of, I guess, like gambling and investing is, a lot of synergies, a lot of parallels, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. Um, I
So what do you
the
think? Is angel investing like rich people buying lottery tickets? I mean, you have to be accredited to get into the best deals. You kind of have to have that access, or, I mean, like I think we're kind of pretty clearly seeing like to do, a pretty legit angel, like to be a pretty legit angel investor, if you're putting meaningful size checks, I mean, you got to have a lot of money, right?
Yeah. Well, I think, like the distinction to me is like, are you trying to make it a skill based thing or a luck based thing?
Hmm.
Right. And so, yeah, I mean, by like the odds, maybe it's similar, but, and maybe by the way Kirk's doing it too, by saying, hey, I'm just trying to spray and pray a bit. Like you're making it a luck based thing. Whereas if you're doing diligence and trying to pick winners, you are inherently assuming that you have a skill that will make it not gambling. Right.
I think the key word you used is assuming, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. Like you see, right? If you look at public markets, right? Like a few of the first websites I started were in the personal finance space. So I got really into, basically looking at the performance of public market funds, and all the stats are crazy, like 90% of, mutual funds don't even outperform the index, right? So if you go buy a Vanguard S&P 500 fund, you're like way better off. But so many people have their money, especially like high net worth people, because they're used to overachieving, right? So they get sold sold on these products that have like 1%, 2% fees, and the average is only returning 8 to 10%. So it's like you're actually cutting your return by 25%, right? And so in public markets, I'm like very skeptical of any fund or product that says they can out return the market, right? But in private investing and angel, you're kind of betting on the opposite, right? That there's some asymmetry of information, or you can provide some value, or, you know, that you're going to make a lot of money. But it's tough when there's no baseline, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, and the big difference, right, is like public companies, they're much older, right?
Yeah.
Like just by virtue of it, right? Like you can't get in at the lowest cost basis. That's
Right.
what, like,
Yeah. That's a good
the
point.
thing I always feel like I learned about investing is low cost basis leads to great returns, right?
Yeah. I
And
think
so,
that's the key.
yeah, or like, so there's one like low valuation, low cost basis, getting in early, getting in ahead of a trend, right? Like those are like really like those are where the outsized returns seem to come from. But
Yeah.
also just being okay that you should invest in a trend that's already popular and ride the
Mm-hmm.
wave. Like that's the thing that like is really hard to do, is trying to understand like, is it already peaking or is it going to continue to go?
Yeah.
And that's those are like the two things that I like, if I can get right, that's where I
Mm-hmm.
make money. And that's why the public markets are just so hard, because in some sense, one, there's a lot way more information out there, and so the markets
Yeah.
are more perfect in some sense. And I have no edge, but I also just can't like get in a low cost basis, right? Like you're kind of a taker of whatever's out there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of
So
my
I don't know what to do. I've been writing down, or for this episode at least, I was writing down some good quotes from Kirk. I don't know what to do with them. If we should put them, might be too long for a hat or a shirt. I don't know what we're going to do with these quotes. Tweet them out, I guess. But, you know, he also said why 3 minutes is all you need for due diligence for an angel investment. I might be paraphrasing a little. And then I think I'm definitely paraphrasing this one, but he basically said why I turned down $47 million in crowdfunding. He said he got 50 million and then ended up raising $100 from 30,000 investors on Republic, right, to get 3 million in crowdfunding. I like that line of thinking though, where he did say, I mean, it's sort of it's like a good problem to have if you can. I think most founders are more like, I kind of like, I'll take what I can get, right? I need money. But if you do have more money than you need, or you have the luxury of not needing money so badly that you can turn away potential investors. I did like what he was saying, and that, you know, like someone who's not a pro, doesn't know what they're doing, doesn't have a lot of money, they're probably going to like be fucking annoying. They're probably going to ask you for a bunch of updates. You know, if like things aren't going well, they're going to get scared. I think Jack said this too.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's a common thread for sure. Yeah. No, I was just thinking like the inevitability piece for me was like, I think there's something interesting there for like his investment philosophy is like invest in
Yeah.
things that are
What did
inevitable.
he say? He said, yeah, invest in things that are inevitable.
Yeah. And I
That's
was
another
thinking
good quote.
invest in
We're totally
inevitability.
paraphrasing here,
Yeah.
but
Well, no, but invest in inevitability is like,
invest
I like
in
that.
inevitability. That's a good hat right there.
Yeah. Good
I think
alliteration.
we're trying to make little hats for all of our guests with like their best quotes. For Jack, we gave him fresh flesh. I don't know if it's arrived in his mailbox yet, or if he even checks, or if he's gonna get it, and he's gonna get this hat in the mail that's like says fresh flesh on it. He's like, what the fuck is this from? Who sent me this? So we might
I'm
actually need to
hopeful.
follow up with Jack and say, hey, did you get that hat we sent you? But I like invest in inevitability. And it reminds me of one of my friends who I would like to invite onto the podcast someday, Tom McInerney. He's a big angel investor here in Los Angeles. And I remember he once told me in regards to angel investing that he never likes to invest against trends, right? So like in the EV space, I don't know if it was this company or another, right? Like battery capacity is getting better, charging is getting faster, right? So like any product that kind of conflicts with that, right? Like the inevitableness is that like for EVs, the batteries are going to get bigger, charging is getting faster, right? So if you aren't kind of like, you don't want to invest against the grain of that in something, where like a good example actually is like battery swapping technology, right? Like, hey, you can swap a battery right now really quickly, but in the future, will it be easier just to plug it in, right? So kind of thinking about that. I remember he told me something like, and that's like one of the frameworks that I've like to use. I think it's similar to invest in, what's inevitable.
Yeah, I mean, and I kind of view this like what Kirk was saying with AI. It's like it's just going this direction, right? And so, like, I guess the question is, from an investment perspective, is like, which investments do you make? Like, is it a picks and shovels? Is it a net new technology? What is it? What do you, how do you think about that and have a framework, which I think probably is important. But
So
all
I think
costs
it's
should trend to
which
zero, right?
investments, right? Which is sort of a strategic. And then also what I wanted to ask him, but didn't quite have the time, was about timing, right? Because I thought like almost everything's inevitable, right? Not
Yeah.
almost everything, but it's like, I feel like investing is all about like finding the right investment, the right team at the right time, right? Like he mentioned DoorDash and Uber, and I think the famous example there is Webvan, right? I guess they were this grocery delivery service company in the 2000s. Great idea, obviously. It was inevitable, but the timing was 20 years off. Right now, you have Instacart, so I think that's the other thing that I would have liked to ask him about is the timing.
Yeah, I think his point was having that bankroll to be able to keep going. Like that was I think the way he was thinking about it. But yeah, I wish we had gotten that answer.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess the last thing maybe we can talk about and then wrap is, so AI is a good example. It's super hot right now. Everyone is loving it. He's doing, his project is really cool. Everyone should go check it out. And I wonder if anyone's listening to this episode without having listened to the interview with Kirk, but
I that
this
one
is
guy
like the clip
mentioned,
notes.
yeah, that one guy mentioned he likes to listen to these type ones to know if he should listen to the full ones. So at
Oh,
least one person out
I
there.
think we got one email or one really good feedback that this was their favorite episode, the recap we did with Jack. So that's why
Great.
I texted you after. I was like, dude, let's do a recap because we got that one email. So that's all I need to keep going. But yeah, I feel like that the AI, I don't know, like if crypto was like supposedly inevitable too, right? So it was like a new big fad, and yeah, we'll see. So all right, I know you got to run. So good stuff. We'll reconvene next week.
All right. Till next week,
All right.
Harry.
Take care.
Bye.